try and explore this question of what's the future of digitization. I just told the back end of the chat from Reza talking about data itself, but I'm going to step back and look at these 7 questions, starting with what do we see the future of computing? How does that change the trends of digitization? Because a lot of what we do with AI is actually driving that digitization. And that drives new kind of work. So what is that future of work that we see? How does that change the business, the enterprise itself? And then, of course, what the clients are actually doing with that? What are they expecting during this quite uncertain time? And then, of course, what the underlying decisions are. And I'm going to finish with some thoughts on being a responsible computing provider. So let's start with the first question, which is, what is the future of computing? Well, we're all familiar with computing from its past. In the 1947, we invented the transistor, and the world of bits has been really with us ever since then. We surpassed 1 million transistors to every human alive. 1 billion transistors to every human alive back in 2010. We've then moved on and started to use a set of advanced technologies, which really started back in the 1960s. And we refer to that as AI, as you all know today, and that's the world of neurons. But we're about to start this new world of qubits. So for us, we see the future of computing actually combining the world of bits and von Neumann and all the logic structures, the world of neurons, which is AI, and both forms of AI that's out there, many forms of AI, and quantum. So let me try and explore that a little bit more with you first. So the world of bits, we've come a long way, and we don't really think enough about how far we've come. And we're right at the moment at 7 nanometers silicon chips, and we can't even imagine that. We can see in the labs going through to 5 nanometer, 3 nanometer. So that world of more and more bits compressed into a small amount of space is going to be with us for some time yet. And that, of course, creates tremendous opportunity for us, but at the same time creates lots of scientific and technology challenges. So there's certainly scope to do a lot more there. But really, AI was born back in the 1950s, and the birth of AI allowed us to take structure and logic and help us start to understand things like, if I take an input of an image, by doing multiple layers of extraction, I can find an output, and I can figure out that picture was a cat. And that's all great. And whilst that's helpful, it doesn't help us know things. So the combination of the symbolic lens along with the learned lens allows us to do some remarkable things. So if I take out this idea of the neural lens, which could take the picture and tell us that that's an apple, but also it doesn't tell us that apple comes on a tree, it has a certain shape, it's a kind, and so on. And it's actually a combination of those that lets us do some amazing things. So let's look at a few examples. So look at the work that we did with, say, the world of neurons. So back in 2016, 2017, we built the trailer with Morgan, where we analyzed a set of videos and created a viral trailer. So AI lets us take images and understand what matters to people. The picture on the bottom left is, we've used AI today to help design fashion. So working with the Bollywood industry, using AI to understand how a fashion designer might figure out what the latest fashion is and design that fashion. We've used it in perfumery. So we're using the notion of social media on the top right. In that picture, you'll see personality insights, which shows the personality of an individual. By taking their social media profile, we can analyze that, and you can then figure out what kind of perfumes would they like. We can also start to use AI to project forward. So the image in the middle bottom shows a picture of a sculpture, an active sculpture that Gaudi might have created. So we took the learning of how what makes something Gaudi-esque and create a sculpture which in the modern day we think what Gaudi might have created. And of course, going forward, you see the world of communications and knowledge. And the bottom right is an image of debater, which allows AI to be able to have a conversation with a debater and actually do that debate. So last year we had that live. If any of you haven't seen that, I'd recommend you go see that, because it's fascinating what's possible. So this is really where we've got to with the world of AI, and what we've achieved is really through what we refer to as narrow AI. We see the world of broad AI coming along, which is really in the future. but we're quite a long way from general AI. So just make sure we all understand what we're talking about here. We're right at the point of narrow AI moving into broad AI. And we can see in the 2050s and beyond getting beyond that. And that's just to sort of simplify that. Narrow AI is really about deep learning. It's focused on a single design, a single task, a single domain. Broad AI really allows us to take a much broader set of tasks, multitasks, multi-domain tasks, and start to create new kind of insights, new kinds of capability. True kind of neuro AI is a long way off, but that we can see coming along in the future. But all of this is still limited in what it can do, and that's really where quantum comes in. So what we're expecting with quantum is using very different forms of simulation through quantum capabilities to be able to address problems that we can't do today. So some of the much more complex optimization challenges, trying to discover new materials, new chemicals, doing factoring, for example. These are all still very difficult with traditional IT systems, but with quantum it becomes much more possible. As you're probably well aware, we've achieved a quantum volume of over 50 so far, and we continue to progress that. So we've just announced our latest roadmap of quantum processors, which will take us on a journey over the next couple of years to get to over 1,000 qubits. And we can see over the coming period that continuing to double on an annual basis, and the roadmap through to 1 million qubit computer systems is available. And those are all there as a foundation for really driving the next wave of digitization. So when you think about the world of bits and neurons and qubits together, this is all about us surviving the world and using that to really create new kinds of experiences and solve societal issues. And it really reminds me of the image of Dynasties. I hope many of you saw the great BBC series on that. And the king of the jungle, the lion, is being attacked by a pack of hyenas. And if you get enough hyenas together, they can absolutely kill a lion. And this is what's happening in the world. So the next wave of digitization, which is fueled largely by AI, will allow small, nimble organizations to really challenge established industries. And so everybody is thinking about this notion of digitization and how it changes the world. And we're all trying to mimic things like the Facebook or the Netflix or the Amazon or the Google of this world. And really, for me, this is about be digital, be digitized, right? The world of AI, the world of digitization is about ensuring you understand what's going to be digitized out there and staying ahead of that. So trying to explore the next question then is, okay, so if that's where the world of computing is going and the foundation, how do we see the world of digitization going forward? And I think there's three fundamental laws to digitization. We all kind of need to be very comfortable with this and understand this. The first law is that whatever can be digitized will be. Right? Sounds pretty obvious, but we've got to really recognize that there is a constant move to digitize more and more aspects of the world and society as we think about it. The second piece is whatever can be digitized tends to become free. And that's kind of a very sort of scary notion, but digitization does drive out value from systems. We've seen that with the things like the videos and music and so on. But there's a third law which is really, really important, which is that the act of digitization relates to new data. And it's that new data that allows new value to be created. The opportunity for us is to use that data to create completely new experiences. And those new experiences really drive the creation of new business models. And what we see is there's 5 broad, simple ways of thinking about that. So first, if I take a physical product, I can augment that product with sensors and connectivities, and that creates new experiences. Anything that's done by humans, we can start to use AI and those kind of technologies to digitize those things and create new automations and create new value and complete new experiences. Any value chain that spans multiple organizations, the gaps in those value chains creates inefficiency. There's about $4 trillion wasted every year around the world because of those inefficiencies. And we can use AI and intelligent workflows to span organization boundaries and create new value. In the same way, data that organizations have locked up inside the organization, by releasing that data in the marketplace, we can create completely new experiences and create new value, and actually monetize that data. And finally, the digital twin is a way of creating complete new experiences. And my simple and most commonly used stories around that is by taking the example of the taxi. Right? So if you think about what happened 5 years ago, when you phone for a taxi, you'd phone the taxi company and they'd say the taxi is going to be there in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And you knew at best that was a guess. At worst, it was a complete lie. And you didn't know where it was on that spectrum. What Uber did is they created a digital representation of the taxi on a map. And that digital representation allowed you to see where the taxi was and see the journey. And you could then very quickly see when it was going to arrive, and you could get a very clear estimate of the arrival of that taxi. That's what this range of digitization is helping us do, and it will start to create some new capabilities. The underlying capability, of course, is then using data, and for us as data scientists, we need to really recognize that the logic of this is data plus analysis gives us information, and that's what we've been doing with the world of bits for some time. It's only when you bring the world of neurons that you realize, well, actually, information put into a context creates new insight. So previously, we had to wait to try and understand what that data was. We relied on humans to do that. More and more, we're creating models through AI that create context and creates new insight. But those things are still costs. But we've got to really try. The primary value of digitization is create new outcomes. And it's the action that you create from those outcomes that creates the impact. And that's where the value comes from. And so you've got to understand that as part of this, there is a journey, and there's journeys taking place, which requires a new set of skills. And so as an AI engineer and AI scientist, you need to think about the range of skills. So there's those that gather the data and catalog and manage that data. We think about them as squirrels. There's those that understand what we can create from the world and the kind of impact we can create, the visionaries, the owls of the worlds. There's those cunning wolves and foxes who are the theorists. They understand how to write that line of R code or that line of Python, which creates some magical experiences. But you still need the engineers, the people who make the robust, reliable, dependable systems. The weaver birds building those big, complex nests. But you also got to maintain a level of legality and privacy and ethics of the righteous that the hawk does flying above and overhead. But this all drives us towards creation of new work. And as I think about new work, there's new collar work that's emerging. It's very much outcome-based, very unpredictable, creating complete new business models. There's new working practices that associate with that and new values. So as you think about your work and how you apply that, you've got to put it into that context of the future of work. And ultimately, the enterprises are going through massive change. All the big corporations are reimagining themselves, and they're trying to become what we refer to as more of a cognitive enterprise. They're really powering the organization through a combination of exponential technologies, creating that culture of constant agile innovation, creating ecosystems and so on. I don't have a huge amount of time to go through this today, but you can see the kind of model that we're seeing of the businesses emerging in the future. But the foundation of this is, of course, what are clients really trying to do? So through AI, what we're seeing is that they're using AI to do three things. One is to survive. As we come through the challenges that COVID has left us with, we have to survive these competitive and societal challenges. At the same time, the second thing is that they've built up over the last 30, 40, 50 years, the traditional enterprises, they've built up very complex environments. They've got to use this next wave of digitization to simplify those systems and be ready for the next era. And then the final piece is that they want to try and identify the things that they can superscale, the things that are unique and special to them, that they can really scale through the marketplace and capture the value. So these are the three primary outcomes. And to achieve that, corporations are really looking at a broader sense of this and saying, how do I imagine the technology landscape that supports my business? And we might think of AI as one piece, but actually AI is spread across all of this. So how I run my systems and how I do my site reliability engineering and how I keep the systems running, the operational automation requires AI. How I run my multi-cloud infrastructure, because I can't do this in any one cloud structure, it's got to be all over the place. The services are right across the landscape. That also needs AI. Through the layers of intelligent workflows, insight services, even in the security space, we need tremendous amount of AI just to stay ahead of the perpetrators and make sure our systems are secure. And so really the foundation of this is ensuring that we draw the best from what's around the world and society, and leveraging not just technologies that are proprietary, but also leveraging the open source technologies. So I think a big part of what we all need to do is think about how we're using the open source, but also continue to contribute to open source. And I think one of the big pieces that we champion is it's important that you have that open source capabilities. But ultimately, this comes back to what you do in your day job as an AI person, right? Or as an AI engineer, as an AI scientist. And for me, this is about ensuring that we're all recognizing some of the societal issues that we face today. When I think about and I read the articles like the internet's got its dirty secret and how much carbon footprint we're creating, through to the kind of abuse of data through that we see through social media platforms and so on, I think there's an opportunity for us, especially here in our sort of northern AI community, to think about being a responsible computing provider. And it starts with understanding how we reduce the carbon footprint of the systems themselves, reducing the underlying cost of the data center, the infrastructure, ensuring the code is responsible, so it's open, ethical, secure. We start to use the data in the ways it was meant for, so we create that kind of responsible data insights, ultimately creating systems which are free from bias, explainable, trusted, and so on, and ultimately driving the right kind of impact and creating the world that we want to be part of. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity here in the North in using AI to be that responsible computing provider, and that's a tremendous chance for us. Now, what I'm not trying to do is sell you on any things here. I'm trying to give you a broader perspective so you can see how the world of technology is moving, how AI and those kind of capabilities will drive digitization, and how ultimately what we do to be able to make the world a better place that will differentiate us. So with that, I'm going to stop and hand back.